Finance Committee, July 31st, 2025. I'm going to go through some boilerplate and then we'll introduce everybody that's here at the tables. Pursuant to Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022 as amended, this meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format. The public has been provided with adequate alternative means of access via Zoom as noted in the posted meeting notice, along with access and participation instructions. As chair, I hereby notify all participants that this meeting is also being recorded by the town through Hadley Media and will be made accessible to the public. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, any person who intends to record or transmit this meeting must inform the chair at this time. Nobody says they're recording. Okay, so at the select board table, Jay Nevin Smith, myself, Randy Unger, Paul Keegan, David Phil, and the HR Director, Lauren Wilcox. At the podium is our interim town administrator, Mike Mason. We have the Finance Committee over here. I'm going to let you guys open your meeting and introduce yourselves.
Okay, so we'll call finance meeting to order, and starting we have Peter Matusco, Paul Benjamin, Chardul Karmar, myself, Amy Biden, and with us is Linda Sanderson, treasurer.
And Finance Director. Okay, so the purpose of this meeting tonight is to go over our proposed Props 2.5 override. The town administrator is going to explain what that is, tell you why we need it, etc., etc. At the end of the presentation, if anybody has any questions, please feel free. We, amongst all of us here, hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions. Keep in mind that the information you're getting tonight is the latest available information we have. It may change slightly between now and town meeting, but just understand we're doing the best we can with what we have. Town meeting date is September 9th at 7 o'clock at Hopkins Academy. And with that, Mr. Mason.
Thank you, Randy. Good evening, everyone. So I just want to thank a few people for helping put this slideshow together. I will be going through the slideshow, and as the chair just mentioned, if the audience has any questions, if there's any questions from those folks online, please just raise your hand, and we will we'll have you ask your question before we go on to the next slide. And my hope is that if it's a data-driven question, Linda might be able to help us with that. Paul Benjamin helped us put together this slideshow. We're trying to keep it as simplistic as possible. Some of you are probably very well versed in tax overrides, and you may understand this. And I apologize for some of the elementary level information we're going to give you, but we really just want to make sure that we can cover everything so that everyone understands what's going on. So we'll start with this. What is a Prop 2.5 override? As many of you know, the town of Hadley currently has a Prop 2.5 tax increase. What that means is that annually, your taxes automatically will go up by 2.5% of what our total budget is. The idea behind that is to try to keep up with the normal increases that occur across town. Inflation, additional positions added, employee raises, and things like that. What the override part of that means is that we are at a point right now in Hadley where those 2.5% increases just simply are not enough. The way things have been going, we have been slowly falling behind year by year. And Linda, as the finance director, has essentially been trying to close this budget gap, these shortfalls each year. And we are in a situation right now where we've had some unforeseen increases in our insurance costs and things like that, which we will get into in a moment. And we need to request over and above tax increases from that 2.5%. Everything that you're going to see tonight, any of the numbers that we show you, are only for the override numbers. They do not include the Prop 2.5 part of it or any of the normal tax increases that you will see. As you know, our fiscal year runs from July 1 each year to June 30th of the next year. It's impossible for us to predict any of the abatements or valuations that our assessor's office has to do, which do affect your taxes. So all of the numbers that you're gonna see here tonight, I'm gonna really hammer on to make sure that folks know that this is what is over and above that 2.5%. So these are the two components for the override. We have a specific request that we're gonna show you for the general operations budget. There are 3 parts to that. We'll break it out simply to really kind of be very specific as to what we're asking for. And then we have this capital maintenance fund, which we'll explain when we get to that point. The first part, the general operations budget, is really for your essential day-to-day service. It covers your public safety departments, DPW, all of your town departments, collector, assessor, all of those departments for your day-to-day function. And then the second part is capital type items. So those types of things are major building repairs, significant equipment purchases like fire trucks and DPW equipment. We used to have police cruisers in the capital fund each year, and then kind of infrastructure upkeep, your water lines, your sewer lines, things like that. When those things go down, again, massive expenses. We want to be able to have a fund here to be able to pay for those things in cash, so that we don't have to continue to follow. Both of those overrides that we just went through are going to be, those are going to be 2 separate overrides. You'll have your general operations budget override, and then you will have capital completely separate from that. So you can decide which one or none that you want. And both of those overrides have to pass 2 separate votes. They have to pass at town meeting, which, as the chair just mentioned, is going to be in early September. We'll get to that date at the end. And then if it passes, if either one of them pass at town meeting, then it goes to a ballot vote. Okay, so then you folks basically will have 2 chances to decide whether or not this is important enough for you. So here's part 1 of the general fund that we're looking for. That total on top is the total. The next 3 slides are going to build into that number. So essentially that general operational amount that we need is $2,250,624. The first part of it is for fire and EMS. For those of you who recall, a couple of years ago, our fire department went to a full 24/7 fire department, full-time firefighters for the first time in our history. The town never put the budget for those firefighters into the actual operational budget. The town had been utilizing a stabilization fund, which I'll get to in a few slides, to basically cover these costs in the hope and in the thought that we would be starting a ambulance service, which could hopefully recoup or at least mitigate the costs of an ambulance service. Since that time, with the funding problem that we're having right now, we put a pause on moving towards that ambulance service. However, we already have the staff and the equipment and everything that we need for this full-time fire department. And so what we need to do at this point is move this money into the operational budget. This is not covered anywhere. So that's the first part of this general fund that we need. Here's part 2. Again, that top number remains the same, but this is the second part that works into it. We need, well, that second bullet point below here, 338,404. What you saw on the last screen for the fire department, that 338,404 is essentially for all of the rest of the departments in town. There's approximately 21 or 22 other departments in town. This is what the other departments need to continue their operations into FY 26 and 27. This number on the bottom is unfortunately a massive mid-year health insurance increase that was unforeseen by anyone. The part on the bottom there, 330,000. That was an unforeseen health insurance increase, which came at the start of FY 26. So we already had to put $330,000 that we did not expect into this budget, which required us to cut the budgets of these departments. So we need to put this money back in, otherwise we're not going to be able to run these departments effectively, and it will affect the services now. So these two numbers essentially go together. This is for our health insurance, and we have been warned that as of July 1 next year, there will be another potential double-digit health insurance increase that we're going to have to cover. We don't even know what that's going to be yet. So there is a possibility that over the course of one fiscal year, the health insurance costs for this community is going to be potentially $1 million. I don't know any community that can sustain costs like that, having to put that into your operational budget. But that's really what we're faced with. And here is the final portion of that general fund $2.2 million request. We're going to get into what free cash is in a minute and where it comes from, but essentially, we had to use, well, let me start back a little further. Over the course of the last few years, the finance director working with finance committee and the select board have been trying to use less and less free cash to fund our budget. We don't want to use free cash just to balance things, okay? In previous years, this was how we balanced our budget. It was just a common thing that we took free cash that we had and we pushed it into the budget every time we had a shortfall. When Linda came on, we started to change that idea, and over the course of the last several years, we were using less and less. That freed up free cash to be able to use it for things like you needed, if the library needed another half-time employee, you would be able to do these things working within your levy, would not have to raise taxes, and you could use the free cash that you have. This fiscal year, we had to use every dime of free cash just to balance the budget. And as I mentioned before, we are still short in almost every single department. So these are the items that went into that $846,785. When there is leftover free cash from the normal spring town meeting, what we usually do with it is it will carry over into the fall, and we'll be able to use it for things like I just described, or potentially even some capital items. There is $0 to roll into the fall. So the first thing that we need to do is replenish this free cash so that we will be able to get out of the hole if we get the override. So that's part of your 2.250 total. Again, that 330,000 increase was one of the chunks that took out of this free cash. Employee compensation increases. Multiple years ago, the select board started a compensation study to measure our employees against all other communities across all of the 25 or so departments that we have in town. And that number right there is the number that they recommended increases for our staff. And that's for all of the employees in town, approximately 100+ people, somewhere in that area. And then the balance of the free cash that was carried over from the prior year was also utilized to go into that number. So we're going into the fall and next year, next fiscal year, with no free cash. Any questions so far? Okay. All right. We just wanted to show folks full-time equivalent comparisons, just so people understand the staffing situation here in Hadley. David Nixon used to do an annual staffing comparison. And unfortunately, in 2019 was the last time that this was done. So what we want to show you is in blue is the staffing from 2019 within each one of those departments. And if you look at public safety right across, we consider DPW public safety. If you look across these 5 or 6 departments, these are usually the largest departments, and the school is not included here. The school would be the largest department. But we wanted to show you this grid just to show you that from 2019 up until 2026, the blue was 2019, and 7 years later, the present day is the orange. So I know that it doesn't have numbers. The next screen will help a little bit more, but this is just kind of a visual so you can look down and see each one of these departments where some of them grew. And again, you look at the fire EMS, we made them 24/7 for the first time in history, so we added personnel to that department. This is how FTE tracking works. The full-time equivalent, the method is used to quantify the workforce. It doesn't necessarily mean that these are full-time employees. Part-time employees work into the equation. Okay, so if you look at the bottom here, a perfect example of this is if you hire a part-time employee working 20 hours, a normal person would be working 40 hours. It counts as a half full-time equivalent. So essentially, where we're at, the last study that was done was in 2019, actually technically it was July of 18. 85 personnel across all departments, not counting the school. And present day, 7 years later, 114 personnel. So that's 29 additional people that we hired for positions that previously didn't exist, for a total of 22.15 FTEs. That equates to about 4 people per year, somewhere in that area. But we just wanted to make sure everyone understands what we're talking about as far as staffing goes. All right, this is a just kind of a spreadsheet essentially of the data that I have just showed you from the first 3 or 4 slides where we're breaking up the costs associated with our budgets. So FY26 budget voted is the $846,000 in free cash. If you look at the additional budget increases, that whole column on the right-hand side is the override request. And what budget each amount goes to outside of the capital. This does not include the capital requests. We'll get to that later. So I just wanted to show folks just kind of a better visual as to what goes into that $2.25 million request. This sheet breaks it down by, I don't want to say department, how do we describe these?
Government areas.
Government areas. Okay, so public safety, as I mentioned before, covers police, dispatch, fire, EMS, and is there a portion of DPW in there, highway in that, or
Just the
inspections?
highway, not water and sewer. Highway and maintenance.
Okay, and so I just wanted to show folks what we're looking at here. The FY26 general budget, general fund, those numbers in the darker shaded column are the numbers that you all approved at town meeting. Those are the numbers that you approved for the budget. Now, bear in mind, in order to put a budget in front of you at town meeting, the way that the budget process works is that each department has to put together their budget. They have to make a budget request. The first place that budget request goes is to the finance director. Finance director looks at the totals as to how much money we have. And she will also look at every single line item, and she'll look at spending within those line items. One of the first ways that she decides if an adjustment is necessary is she will look at the spending in the line item, and if someone has hit half of the fiscal year and they've only spent a tenth of the line item that they're requesting, we make an adjustment, we make a reduction in that line. And it's up to the department head to come in and explain to us why they need that money that's in that budget. Every single budget goes through this process. So what we did in order to balance the FY26 budget, the budget that we were in right now, is we cut because we knew that we were heading towards this problem. we cut expense lines down to the bare minimum. There are two different types of lines in the budget. There's wage lines and expense lines. Our priority was keeping all staff, keeping all of our employees. So we made significant reductions in everyone's, almost everyone's. Some departments are Department 1. And they're just bare bones and there's nothing from cut, but we went through and we cut from all expense lines, almost every department. What you see on that right-hand side, after we made those cuts, when we knew we were headed towards potentially requesting an override, we called all the department heads back in. And we asked them to explain to us what it is that they needed so that they can continue operations. My department was one of them. I cut so much out of our IT line that by the end of FY 26, I probably wouldn't have been able to pay for our telephones. That's the problem. The police department. So these are the things, these numbers on the right-hand side are the things that we asked the departments, what do you need back? Those numbers are much less than what the department heads told us, because the department heads came in and they did what they normally do in a budget cycle, and they said, I need this amount of money. We worked with the department heads to try to reduce this again. And get it to a more palatable number. $1.4 million is a lot of money. It's a lot of money to ask you folks to try to come up with. So these, the numbers on the left and the numbers on the right have gone through multiple rounds of budget cuts. We are satisfied. I don't want to speak for Linda, but we are satisfied that we have reduced these budgets to the bare minimum, which will keep staffing and get the departments their next budget cycle. Does anyone have any questions on the general stabilization, or I'm sorry, the general override before we explain the capital stabilization, sir?
Thank you. You said that there were 21 to 22 departments in town, 100+ town employees, and that some of these are departments of one.
Yes, sir.
Could you elucidate, what's a department of one?
So if you just change the microphone,
And what is that?
she's the park and rec department, she's the only one.
That's a paid position.
Yes, sir.
Second is, what is the town employees share percentage-wise of the health insurance?
The town pays 65%. Town goes,
And has that gone under the microscope as well?
is it gone under the microscope
Yeah.
as
As
far
far
as
as
reducing the town coverage?
reducing, balancing
Yes.
it out a little more favorably.
Yeah, we did this, we actually did discuss it at the last select board meeting. Unfortunately, currently, all of the percentages, with the exception of non-union employees, most of our staff are union employees, including school. And we would have to bargain that with all of the unions in order to change that. And we bargain those things,
Yeah,
we have to give them something.
right. And I'm curious, the town has a CPA program. In which we take what, 3%? If we were to get out of the CPA business, would that 3% additional tax come back to the town and be valuable to the town? Because all that is money taken and given away for nothing.
Anyone else help with that?
I can help with that. So the CPA fund is a separate fund for that purpose only. If you wanted to do away with it, the town would have to vote to get out of the CPA, and then that money would go away. That 3% wouldn't be still coming into a fund that we could utilize for something else.
3% is an additional surcharge, so to speak, just for CPA, not as part of your.
So then if you were going to increase the citizenry tax rate, it would be 3% less because there wouldn't be the surcharge. So hence, it would be a little less painful if we stopped doing CPA because it makes sense to me in a crunch. You've got I'm not gonna say golden goose, but I'll say a golden goose sitting there taking taxpayers' money. And most of the taxpayers don't get a heck of a lot back from CPA. So consequently, there would be another ore in the water of the town to get some more revenue and not be as offensive to the citizenry.
Molly, you can check me on this, but the CPA 3% is on real estate sales only, is that correct? No, it's on the whole town,
Cut the
okay.
whole town every time.
But the other thing that happens with that is that the state matches and gives us additional money, which we use for a lot of different things within the town.
Correct, but if it wasn't there, we wouldn't get from the state, and that money could go directly to the citizens as a, let's say, reduction in their proposed tax increase. You gotta give up something to get something, and I feel strongly that we should look at that as an option to get some percentages back, because, you know, whatever you're talking about percentage wise, if you take 3% of the entire tax bills of all the people in Hadley and give it back to them, they could take that 3% and give it back to the town.
I think it's fair that that's an idea. And that is part of what we want to get to tonight, is to hear, comments, ideas. So we don't necessarily want to advocate strongly one way or another, but part of the reason for the forums is to get additional information and thought from the taxpayers. And to the extent that's something that you'd like us to look at, I think we should put it on the list. I know Mary Thayer's response already, but I think it's something that we should consider, so.
That's right, consider it, because it might be a win-win, or it might be a win, tie game. But it couldn't be a negative.
So, and just so you understand, if we talk about it, and I'm sure we're willing to talk about it. If we decide that that makes sense, it's gotta go to town meeting.
Oh, I understand that, I'm going through the process.
Yes.
But I think if you start talking to those in town who do not benefit from CPA anything, they're gonna say, well, oh, they're taking 3% of my money, giving it to something to fix a barn somewhere that I never even see.
We understand what you're saying, we can certainly look into it.
Please, thank you.
Could I add one more factor into that? We're talking tonight about we will be talking about the capital stabilization fund where we would be taxing and putting money into that fund to spend on some capital purposes in town. Every dollar in that fund is coming from the taxpayer. When we have CPA and we put dollars into that money, we might have a capital project such as we have had on our own town buildings. But those aren't all just our dollars, they're matched by the state, and I think that's an important factor. I agree, it's, let's have it out there for discussion, but we do have, there is a benefit, we get more for our dollar from the CPA. They're not all spent on capital, I agree, and, maybe more people have to be putting forth projects that you can see. I wouldn't want to be hasty and parting with what can be potentially a very valuable capital project resource for us. It has to be the right projects, but the fact that we get state support and state matching for those funds is.
To itemize a couple of projects. Major town projects that we can say.
Linda, maybe just in the spirit of time, I think, because the topic's been raised, I think we should provide that information that these forums are gonna probably build on each other. That's the idea. Again, this is the first one, and hopefully each one, we may have a little bit more information if people have requested.
Just one last thing, you gave $130,000 for Porter Huntington. And they're not even a town agency.
These are voter decisions, the same voters.
Let's not get into that right now.
Oh,
Let's keep moving along.
We can have a list of examples of things that benefit everyone at a future meeting.
Good. Move on, okay. So here is part 2 of the override request. This is the capital stabilization fund. This, again, this is a reminder, will be a completely separate vote, both at town meeting, and if it passes at town meeting, in the ballot box. These are just kind of very, very broad definitions of the types of things that we would use capital stabilization fund for, and that we have used it for in the past. This right here is just a simple graph showing Hadley's tax rate from 2003 to current year. As you can see, at its highest, it was 1311. At its lowest, 884, that was in 2008. And then all the way down there on the end, currently 1163. So this slide right here shows you what the new tax rate will be should the entire override pass. If the entire override passes, the general override at 2.2 million and then the capital maintenance at 300, it's that total of 2,550,624. And that will bring your tax rate to $13.57. And again, just a reminder, this is the override. This does not include the 2.5 or any other adjustments to your annual taxes. This is a grid showing where Hadley is in Hampshire County, with the exception of Sunderland, which is in Franklin County. These are all the Hampshire County communities around us. And as you can see, 1163 is where we are right now. And this is the grid that shows where we would be should the override pass. We'll still be the second lowest in this area. And again, just a reminder, this is all of these communities are before any of their Prop 2.5 increases. And I think every one of them, save maybe 1 or 2, has a Prop 2.5 that they utilize annually. So here's your impact. This is the impact of solely the override. In the one-page form that most of you got, there is a link in there that you can utilize, and you can do these numbers yourself. And you can look at valuations, assessed value all the way up to over $1 million. And I believe it goes down to 250. We picked these 3 because the average assessed value in Hadley is $453,000, somewhere in there. We picked that, put that in the middle, and then just for ease of viewing, we put 350 and 550 on there as well, and just kind of bracket that in. If the full override is voted, your current tax bill at these valuations is currently here. If the entire override goes through, this is where the tax bill would go, and this is your difference. 679 for a $350,000 valuation, 873 for 450, and 1,067 for 550. What those the numbers on the right hand side would be the monthly additions based upon these costs. And again, if you wanted to look this up, the website is right on there, and all you have to do is go to the drop down on top, find Hadley, to put all of the current information in, and then you can type in literally any number you want for an override, and it will give you all of these breakdowns. Okay. I'll make sure we get it. Okay. Free cash. What's free cash? Free cash is basically remaining unrestricted funds from the operations of the previous year. There are certain types of funds that are restricted. Basically, what that means is that within Mass General Law, there are certain pots of money, so to speak, that have a specific dedication to them, and you can only use them for those purposes. CPA is a perfect example. You can only use them for certain items. Free cash is unrestricted funds, and it comes from things like unexpended free cash from the previous year, of which we'll get 0. Actual receipts in excess of the revenue estimated. Unspent budget amounts, so if departments are turning back money, they didn't spend all of their money, we have what's called rollbacks and unpaid property taxes and things like that. That last sentence there explains what some of the potential changes in your annual, in the annual free cash, how it can be affected. So if we have abatements, large abatements from our assessor's office and things like that, it will reduce the amount of free cash we have. So these are the things that, again, as we move through the year, Linda will use to try to calculate before we get our certified free cash amount from the Department of Revenue sometime in late summer, early fall is usually when it happens.
Early September, hopefully, but we're pushing hard, we have a new account, but we hope to have it ready by the time.
Right. So we will know what we have to work with at some point in that area. So here's your free cash balances just for the last 4 years or so. 20, obviously, hard to even look at that one. That's COVID. Can't really utilize that for much. 21, 22, 23, and 24, as you can see, 24 is the most recent. It was slightly over $1 million, and then 22 we had 1.7. So here's the problem. Linda is really good at what she does. She's one of those folks that you don't really need to bring your taxes to a tax place. She does her taxes herself, and she knows exactly what she's getting back before anybody else does. She does the same thing with our free cash calculation. We are concerned that what we are looking at for bringing in new free cash, as you know, we spent all of our free cash from this past fiscal year. So there will be no rollover, there will be no extra added to it. We are potentially looking at somewhere in the area of $300,000 to $500,000 in free cash. Probably, I mean, unfortunately comparing it to COVID here. So that's another one of the things that is just impossible to prepare for in the building budget. Okay, stabilization fund. As I mentioned earlier, when we were talking about the fire department, the town at least 2 town meetings, one I believe in the spring and one in the fall, utilized stabilization funds to cover the costs of your fire department personnel. This is your, for lack of a better term, your rainy day fund. This is the fund that you can use to protect yourselves if anything goes haywire. We really don't want to use these funds because of the fact that we have been using them far too much, and the appetite to continue to use them is gone. We need to keep as much money in these funds as possible. As you can see, here's the stabilization fund balances for the last few years. And the drop that you see from 24 to 25 and the slight drop, the drop you see from 24 to 25 is based upon fire department use as well as a couple of other items that we had to use it for. However, the good news is that, again, because of Linda's how slick she is, she makes fantastic investments, and that number should actually be lower than where it is based upon what we spent. Our stabilization account is actually growing without us putting any money into it because of the investments that she's been making. So we feel really good about that fund and being able to move forward with that. So your capital stabilization fund. This was actually created, we do have this, I was actually unaware that we had this fund. It was created at the annual town meeting in the spring of 2010. And again, we already kind of went over this a couple of different times as to what its purpose is and why we have it. In FY 20, we had a massive $118 in there. 21, 22, and 23, and now we're starting to build it back up into 25. So we have $56,552 in there currently. This is the account that we really feel, both select board and finance committee feel like we need to put a significant amount of money in, and then as our Prop 2.5 rolls every single year, this money will continue to grow in this account, and we will be able to utilize it and pay cash for items instead of borrowing. We've built some beautiful buildings here in Haddam in the recent past. We have maintenance accounts in town for basic maintenance for a lot of our buildings. Unfortunately, one of the things that we have failed to build into building accounts is a true maintenance line for the building itself. So there is no line for the COA, for the library, for the North Hadley Fire Station, for significant repairs, infrastructure adjustments. We need to put on a new roof, things like that. There is no line for that. This is what this would be used for. My hope is that as we build buildings in the future, hopefully I won't be in this position when that happens. That we start putting money into the building fund when we're building the building, so that we can take care of that building, make it last. Not every building has generous folks like the Council on Aging folks who put money into a friend's account so that they can care for their building appropriately. Just don't have that for all of our buildings, and we need to start taking care of the things that the folks are giving their hard-earned money for us to build.
Excuse me, Mike.
Yes, sir.
I got some questions.
Sure.
When this building was built 3-4 years ago. We had some solar that was allocated to this building. Right, and we just recently have just put it on this building. My question is how much money was set aside for that solar? How much did it cost us? And in a time of need, knowing for, which I believe is a want for solar, that money could have been put into that stabilization fund to putting into the maintenance of these buildings. And I'd like to know who made those decisions as to why solar was done, in my opinion, as a want, as to buildings that need maintenance. When we have trouble right now, I think that money was not used wisely.
The town voted a building budget for the senior center. That means that money has to be used for the senior center. Part of that was dedicated to the solar on the roof. There will be money left over. It will go back to the town. Somewhere in the $100,000 range, but buildings, money that's dedicated by town vote has to be used for that purpose.
But in a time of need like this, we've always, we've gone to town meetings and said we'd like to allocate money for CPA for 8 acres to going into farming. If the town knew that we've had this money, how much it ever was, to saying, maybe we present this to the town in a town meeting to say, we would like to reallocate this money that we have from solar that was already pre-voted on to actually go into building maintenance. I believe, or couldn't it have been at the time, yes, a pre-vote for it, but if we're in trouble financially, now you're asking for money for something that was for solar. My thought is we're double dipping on the taxpayers. Money that we've already paid for. Could have had a town vote that, you know what, we'd really like to have solar. We'd like to have a town vote to reallocate this money to go into our stabilization for our 3 buildings. That need maintenance, that are the youngest of the 3 years or 4 years. Or into other buildings that need it, and that wasn't done. So my thought is, I thought to the taxpayers, is being double dipped. You had something that you wanted, you had the money, you could have done something with it, and now you wanna ask the taxpayers more for having money for repairs, which you've already had. That's my thought.
Jake, is the solar going on?
Solar's on.
Solar's on,
We're waiting on one part to hook it in.
and then we're gonna save on the electricity before we.
Okay, so you're saving $400 a month as to $20,000, which might need for maintenance for this building and another building. So that's where my thought as to if repairs, painting, lights, HVAC, electrical, whatever outside. I don't think that money was thought as to where it should really go, as to me thinking you wanted solar. Where it should have went to maintenance, that's all it's.
I think I was just gonna ask, maybe if Linda could explain a little bit about, when things are initially allocated. They come from certain buckets, and if it's not used and it goes back. It doesn't necessarily mean that it can be used. For something different, like how we have the water and sewer, if we have extra revenue. That has to go back to certain funds. So maybe if you could explain a little bit
We were
on that.
Sure, we were lucky with all three of the buildings that, and I was, that what was ultimately voted for the construction of them, that the construction came in. Could you be a little louder? Sure, I'm sorry. It's on, so closer, okay. Get closer? Yeah. Okay, we were lucky with all three of the buildings that the project came in under what had been allocated. The full amount had been voted, they were all built over a couple of years. It was through COVID. It was we weren't sure what was gonna happen with COVID. But the construction went on and I think one of the buildings opened, I think maybe this one or library actually opened during COVID. So some of the projects were halted, some of them were. I think each of the three buildings had a reason to hold back some money for a part that had something that hadn't gotten taken care of yet, but was in the original plans. And I think that dealing with solar roof, as I understood, was in one of the plans, or at least something as the construction developed, that it was a part of it. I think with the fire station, I think it was the fiber optics, we had a project there that for one reason or other needed something to happen first and over time. So we actually have a balance still in all three of them, and I think the library maybe was something else that we were uncertain about, what they would need to finish up with the roof, they hit a snag there. So we were, as taxpayers, lucky that for all of those three issues, or particularly the ones, that they didn't need to come back for additional money. So when there is a balance in it, though, it's not going to sit there as it was for the construction of those buildings. And Amy's right that it has to stay in that slot until town meeting votes differently. And we do it when those building committees say we're done, and I think all three still will have a balance. That we will be able to go to a town meeting, convert the balance in those accounts over to another capital purpose, which I'm thinking maybe would be just put that money right into the capital stabilization fund. And I think that would be a legitimate purpose for taking that balance and keeping it in the capital pocket.
But with that, I'm still trying to understand, even though it might have been allocated for it. If the town was tough with money, and money was just sitting there for the past 4 years, I think it'd be easy to ask the taxpayers for maybe free cash flow and taking it out of solar than asking for $300,000 or more at raising taxes on. I was just thinking that was just used inappropriately. It could have been presented to the taxpayers and all the meetings that we've had, just saying we want to change this money. I mean, it's done, what's done is done. It's up and can't do anything about it. But my thought is the way that it was used, it was never presented that we had it, try to getting us out of trouble, putting it into free cash, putting it into something else other than something that we wanted, it didn't need it, we need maintenance, and that was neglected. That's my thoughts on all that. whether it was going, you could, I believe you can always go to avoid to say, because CPA money, I understand at 3%, which I have the same questions with you about. Why can't we do something with changing the percentage, where does it go? It has to stay there, but can a town vote, go to changing of something, reallocating something up to a town vote? Other than CPA money, which has to go to CPA funds, projects, farming or whatever. I know we were saying that, Amy, that there were certain things money has to go to. But was that one of those that had to stay in it? Because in my words, if it wasn't being used, that's free cash.
So just in the spirit of trying to make sure we get through all of the material, because I know it's raining and got a lot of folks that showed up tonight. Maybe we could finish going through and then time a committee, is that,
That's fine. I just wanted to bring that up there. So
no, thanks, Kate.
how we're on.
Okay. Believe it or not, suppose in the eye of the beholder, there is some good news. Again, please understand that when we put these budgets together, we are trying to be as frugal as we possibly can. And we really have significantly reduced budget requests from our department heads. In past years, a lot of your department heads have been hired and a lot of trust has been put into them to build the appropriate budget. And I've only been involved in this side of the budget formation for just one cycle. And I've been working very closely with Linda on this and how she does it. We're not adding a single position with this override. So we're not asking to build upon what we have. We're not asking to grow any department. We are essentially asking for the money necessary to get departments back to their heads above water, essentially, so that they can pay the bills, pay their employees, pay their staff, and continue to maintain the current staffing levels across town. We have maintained our bond rating. The bond rating has stayed AAA for how many years now? 5 years. We've had a AAA bond rating, which allows us to borrow at incredibly good rates. And again, as I mentioned before, we have not had any layoffs or service cuts. And that goes all the way back to COVID. I think it bears mentioning that with the fluctuation of your tax rate over the course of the past few years, we have still been able to provide all of the services that this town has come to enjoy throughout these years. And I think it's a testament to the leadership of the folks that are sitting at these two tables, that every single budget that has gone to town meeting has been approved by both of these groups of people at these tables, and then approved by town meeting, and we've been able to keep all of our staffing. This override will allow us to continue to do that. For those of you who can't think of a question right now, or you think of one after you go home tonight, there are 3 more of these. We're going to be doing 3 more public forums. They will be all here in person, and they will be also on Zoom. You're more than welcome to join either way. We welcome all ideas, as Molly had mentioned earlier. This isn't only for people to ask questions, but they can understand what's going on, or even potentially, have problems with how this happened, or how did we get here and all that. We're also soliciting any thoughts and ideas that folks have to put us in a better place. We are open to anything at this point. I do feel like we have really great leadership, really great financial minds at the helm of this town, but it's I'm also one of those folks that believes that great ideas can come from anywhere. So please don't hesitate. Again, there's going to be 2 in the evening, and then we'll do 1 in midday. Here is your date for the special town meeting. As many of you know, we always have a special town meeting in October, I believe it usually is. And so we dubbed this the special town meeting. There will be 2 items on the agenda. One of them is an operational override. And one of them is the capital override. Those will be the only 2 items that we discuss, in the hopes that won't be there all night. But that's the slideshow. It may change slightly, as Randy mentioned earlier, as we learn more, if we get more information, there may be some slight modifications to it. I am not the best presenter in the world, so there's a chance that I may forget to say certain things in future meetings or leave things out. So I'm gonna do the best that I can, but we're gonna try to keep it as straightforward and the same, so that if you come to one public forum, you've seen the slideshow and we know where we are. So with that.
So we're having one special town meeting in the fall, or we're gonna have another one after that?
We are gonna have to have 2. We're still gonna have to have 2, and the reason for that is that if the override fails, we need to be able to present the town with a budget that is reduced by these amounts. And we need to have the select board and the finance committee have time to decide where all the reductions are gonna come. So we need to be able to put the, we need to be able to put another budget forward. To move forward after that if the override fails.
I have a point about the CPA. I am going to imagine that this is something that you can't just jump in and jump out willy-nilly, and I know that people who got into CPA sooner rather than later have slightly more favorable terms. And if you get out and you get back in, does that put you at the end of the line and jeopardize what funds you have matched?
I'm gonna guess yes.
That's what I was told.
But I'm one of the original members of the CPA committee, and because, as you said, we've been in so long and we have a 3% surcharge, but we get the maximum that the state will give anybody. They have 1 round of giving, and sometimes there's 2 and 3, and we usually get something every time where other towns will not. So I would say that if we were to try to jump in and out, they would not be in favor on that. It would be a royal pain to do it anyhow, because we've got to go to town meeting every time to get in and get out.
But we'll find out. Bring more information back. Thank you.
You said we don't have any layoffs in the past. Are we considering layoffs to bring our payroll down? Payroll seems to be a major problem.
I wouldn't say payroll is a problem. Payroll is how we keep the staff that we have and keep the services that you have here in Hampton. Can certainly see it as a problem, but the priority of the boards has been to keep our staff. If we do not hit the override, there absolutely will be significant layoffs.
I just, can we go back to the slide with the comparing us to other towns in terms of our tax rate? Or, because I think you need to understand the significance of that. I used to live in Northampton. And we didn't get to vote on what they spent.
What the one
Yeah,
where after the override?
that was fine, because I have to say, Sutherland's not in our county. So even after the override, we're gonna be number 1 lowest. Okay, it's nice to be at the bottom sometimes. Okay. That took a lot of work. That took the work of these few folks here, all the committees that are there, the volunteers, my committee that I'm on, Peter's. Tough on things, right? Yes, okay. And this town is very tight on its expenses. I'll tell you how tight it is. Because we haven't been raising taxes, we're in this situation. We should have raised taxes 5 years ago. What do we have, in our sewer fund? Sewer reserves. You know what that is? We get charged for water, and if you're on the sewer line, like my office buildings are, you pay sewer rates. And there's supposed to be a reserve there, because when a main blows or a pump goes, They don't put money into all that stuff, you'd have to put millions of dollars aside. So we have reserves, that's what we do, okay? What are our reserves, anybody know?
$5,000 to $10,000.
I didn't think it was even that high. It was a couple weeks ago, I thought it was 5. We have like nothing, we blow a major pump station for our sewer line and Route 9 shuts down. Okay, our water system is down to what, in reserve, we haven't been raising our rates. Okay, I've only been on this board for 4 years, and the first thing I noticed was we're stealing money to balance the budget, to keep the rates low, because everybody wants low taxes, we've been using our reserves. Now, that worked when we were getting more revenue from Route 9, restaurants were opening, people were eating more, hotels were opening, thank you. Okay? I mean, seriously, we have entrepreneurs in this town, locals, not just the nationals, opening businesses here, but that has slowed down. And that's why we don't have that $1.7 million in free cash, because we have less new revenue, unexpected revenue coming in. Okay, so we're at the thin end of a wedge, and it's not something we couldn't have seen 5 or 6 years ago. But I've been to the town meetings, and I see how tight everybody is for, you know, don't raise my taxes, don't buy that truck, don't buy this. Okay, and so we make decisions to fix things, probably we should have thrown away and bought a new one. And that's an attitude that has to change in this town. Not to raise our taxes to the middle group, stay at the bottom right now, but we have to do this. Our water reserves are down, so we're raising our water rates. Our sewer rates are going up because we have to put that money back. We have to have money to run this town. Our employees are not a problem, they're an asset. Our employees are the people who clear your streets, who educate your children. I've never had kids in this school system. Never will. But we have one of the best school systems in the state. By the way, how good is it? It's lower per capita per student than almost any other school. They spend less per student, and yet our students are at higher grade levels in MCAS. That's tight budget. So yes, maybe we could have pushed off solar on this or done a little bit here and squeezed a dollar there or there with a lot of voting, but I think we're doing a hell of a job. And it's time for taxpayers in our town to just say, look, it can't be squeezed anymore. We have to refill the bucket, bring up and make up for the losses that we're showing because of these revenue problems, and just get us up there again. Now, next year, we are going to get hit again with healthcare. Okay? And we're going to have to need free cash for that, or we're going to have some new revenue. So if you want to lower taxes, you're going to have to find a new way to get revenue in this town. We need to loosen up certain zoning areas to get new businesses in. Recently, we changed and expanded our senior housing projects to get new buildings built. That's a start. But we want to protect our farmland. But Happy is doing an exceptional job. And I just want that to be on the table here, because you have a lot of volunteers who work very hard. Fire department's here, and they're up here as being a big part of this expense. How many people know we had a part-time fire department?
What's that?
Part-time fire department.
We don't have a department.
We have a full-time one now.
Yes, we do.
But before that, what did we have?
Volunteers,
We had volunteers, that's right,
and
okay,
it was handled.
and it was handled, I realize that.
But now look what you've got.
We've got an ambulance service to go with it.
What
We
you
have
had
people-
good supplier with them.
I know, but we also don't have the ability to wait. For one of the things we needed was full-time fire department, because right now, we had a fire at after 7 o'clock at night, the chief and the deputy had to go out in the middle of the night themselves.
Oh,
No, this is an issue. Their ages is an issue, and we should have fire people who are there.
Do we not have a full-time fire department now?
We do now, but we
Yes, we
didn't,
do.
but we're not funding it. That's what this override is about.
Who's paying the bills right now? The taxpayers are paying the bills
We have
right
been,
now.
excuse me, we have a budget and then we have free cash. So what we're doing is removing free cash expenditures, things we're taking from outside, and we're putting them into the regular budget. And that will build up our free cash again. I think I should set it up.
Okay, Paul, that money what you're saying, to go from part-time to full-time, that money came from stabilization. It didn't come from it came from taxpayers in the sense that we had stabilization, but it wasn't coming from the tax levy.
Okay.
So, well, we've been paying for that through these votes for the last 2 or 3 years. To go and when we ramped up for the ambulance service, so now. If we were to go backwards, we're gonna. As Paul mentioned,
Nowhere to go.
if there's a fire after 7 o'clock. The wait time is gonna be significantly more than what it is now, and more than likely. Our house insurance, home insurance and things like that, those get factored in, cause when you're going and getting your home insurance. They look at all of those statistics in measuring that rate, so there is. You're right, paid by tax dollars, but it was just not in this manner, not by tax rate.
All right.
So now we're bringing it to our operating budget, where it should have been. For the most part, we should have done this 3-4 years ago, because it should have been an override to do the full-time fire department. I having my house, living here and having business here. Appreciate having a full-time fire department.
I do,
immensely.
as you know, when you had a fire at your personal residence. I was there when the fire trucks came there. I don't wanna be little fire department, I could literally had to take the hoses away from the guys who were fighting the fire. They're spraying the outside of the house, I can see the fire inside the house, it took me less than a minute to go over there, break the window, open the hose and extinguish the fire.
Well, I think that was also because we had a volunteer fire department. Now we have professionals who are now full-time fire departments who are fully trained and wouldn't have that much of an issue.
Exactly, and think about, I don't think it was as a game, but I remember growing up and going to firemen musters. And is what that is competition between fire departments. And there's obstacles and ways to put fires out. It's just a competition that keeps firefighters sharp. Mike Spankerby is more than capable, that's not what I'm saying, but that is just something would be entertaining for our youth. And people to watch what our fire department usually do.
No, I agree.
Let's keep the discussion to the money, please.
No, I just want to go and say that this override is full-time fire department is dependent on this override. I think we were talking about cuts and things like that. That's gonna be a significant cut. That would be probably the first thing that's gonna get impacted if this override doesn't move forward. I just want everybody to understand that there is a lot of other things that I think everybody's making great points on, but this is probably the most critical item on this override is this fire department.
If the funding for the fire department staffing was expected to be a long-term funding commitment, why was it, and if so, why was it funded as a year-to-year project and not into the general fund as a line item for each year?
Now, that's a great question, and the reason is that we had an expectation that once the ambulance service, the second ambulance would transition to the primary ambulance. And we would have the income from that to go and offset the increase in fire department costs, because our fire department, our firefighters are also the EMS and basically staffing that ambulance at the same time. In other words, if there's a call for an ambulance, there's a firefighter / EMS EMT person that was supposed to be going into that ambulance. We've decided to not proceed with the ambulance. Going to full ALS. We do have a second to call ambulance. We do have a contractor, which by the way, doesn't cost us anything. I just want to make sure everybody understands it. Amherst would have cost us $300,000 to $500,000. The current ambulance contractor that we have is zero. Based on the reimbursement that they charge us a dollar amount, they need a certain revenue amount. We get that money back, and so far, we haven't really had to pay anything for that ambulance service, or minimal. So that's actually worked out for the town. It's been a great decision for having that service. But now that we are not going forward with that, with transitioning to a Hadley fully staffed ambulance service, we have a choice. We can either go back to a part-time fire department, or we go and fund a full-time fire department through our budget process.
Okay. Alex, you got somebody online?
Courtney, can you unmute if you have something to say?
Alex, do you have, can you get a hold of her, Mike, or no? Okay, so,
You want me to manage her?
okay. Try, this gentleman here, like, and Peter,
When she logged on.
Yeah.
Just let her log back in. Yeah, so.
Just for my edification and clarification. The numbers that you put in for the override. Does that include the auto magic through proposition 2.5?
No, sir.
So that's 2.5% on top of what you're presenting? And does that include the 3% CPA, which is a surcharge on? So now we're talking several more percentage points of an increase?
So it doesn't include the proposition 2.5, nor any of the other annual adjustments that we normally have.
Oh.
Again, you can't calculate those because we're in July.
Right, but so what
Yes,
you're actually saying
correct.
is digging deep, it's not just
So
what you presented. It's what you presented plus 2.5% plus 3% for CPA.
Not plus 3%, because that's already,
the 3% is not on
Not
everything.
not plus 3%, it's already in.
Already-
They're talking, this is about what the increase would be to your budget, it wouldn't be an increase.
And not
in
in-
CPI.
And not everybody's gonna experience an increase in that 2.5%. That 2.5% gets reallocated. Based on everybody's assessment. So some people's assessments, their house value might go down. Businesses might go down, businesses might go up. So not everybody is going to experience that 2.5%.
But it's still gonna be in the mix for
That's correct.
tax base.
That's correct.
So what's being presented here, you should add for every. Just say Tom, Dick and Harry out there, add another 2.5% to it.
It might end up being maybe another 10 cents,
But it's still a percentage that's. Kind of varied.
without a doubt. That's correct.
We did,
Yeah,
we didn't say 2.5 across the board, we're just, but yes, you're right, so. We're just focused tonight on the incremental cost to the override.
Okay.
Everything else would remain the same prices.
So, yeah, but there would be the 2.5. Under the weed.
Peter?
I'm actually gonna have to disagree with Cheryl, because when you're talking about properties dropping, I have never seen a house depreciate in this town. For my taxes from 2022 to 26, my assessment went up $120,000, which is an additional $2,000 from what it was. So not only are we gonna be having this tax increase, we're gonna be having our assessment value that everybody's gonna have to be thinking about that additional fee. Not just your taxes, but just the additional assessment, because houses are great in this town, they're hardly ever gonna be finding any houses for sale. Because everybody loves this town because of the taxes are so low. My question is for you, and maybe you might know, Ray, you might know, whatever. How many, out of the 29 people that we've added, how many of them are fire, EMS, DPW and police? And is the reason why to compensate for Route 9 because of how busy Route 9 is? Or is that just the way how the departments work? Just a question.
It's hard to answer over the course of 7 years.
Right.
I can tell you that I looked at the police and the dispatch stats today, because those are the only ones that I can tell just from looking.
Right.
And over the course of that time, we hired one extra dispatcher. I'm sorry, not over the course of the time. From 2019 until present day, so 7.5 years or so, we did hire three new dispatchers so that we could handle full-time operations while handling EMD, emergency medical dispatch, and I believe 2 police officers. For the fire department additions were the to go 24/7 couple, so I believe it was four total individuals. DPW hired individuals for plowing, mechanic, things like that, but again, I don't know the departments inside and out. There were several departments which you'll see a huge jump, but it's only because the department had 1 person and they hired a 7, so it looks like it did double, things like that. But again, these are all additions that went through a normal budget process, went through finance committee, went through select board, and were approved additions and then went through town meeting as well.
Oh, I'm not questioning that, but my
Yeah.
thought is that is to the reasoning, and people aren't gonna like this in life for raising taxes, absolutely not. But if the reason for having all of these extra hires, this extra equipment, these constables that we've said that we voted on that have the same things that they can do as police officers. Has anybody thought about, they're saying options are open, is there anything, a split tax to Route 9? That been up on the table or thought of that?
It has numerous times.
So we've done that once, as far as I know in our history, and that was during COVID. And we shifted 10%, I believe. Yeah, so an additional 10% of the tax burden was on the commercial properties. It's certainly something that I'd like to look into for the future, especially if this passes, because to help defray the cost for the residential, the people that actually live here. But it's something that happens at the tax classification hearing, which I believe is in the spring every year. Or November, okay, so we would need to get this out of the way first to decide, yes, we're gonna do this, or no, we're not gonna do this, and then we can have that conversation of. Should we shift more onto the businesses on Route 9? And we have to remember there are other businesses in North Hadley on River Drive that could be affected as well, but do we want to try and make the Walmart's pay more? Maybe, but we need to decide this first.
Right, in order for it to have its maximum effectiveness, based upon what you're saying, you would have to get the override. And make that adjustment. Yeah. So someone else got
Could we go back to the slide that showed the increase for households?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, so what I'm trying to get a handle on is if I'm paying. I'm somewhere in there, let's say I'm paying $400,000, $4,000 a year right now, okay? That's current tax bill is $1163. Now, that does not include the 2.5 that we've already voted on, or does it?
No, it does not.
Does not,
It's
okay.
only the override.
Okay, so I'll pay another $200 already, okay?
It depends on your assessed value.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's.
Sure,
okay.
yeah.
So for that line, there's a couple $100 for what we already voted for. And now if this passes, it might be another $200. So I'm paying a total of $400 to $500 for my house, for that $350, $400,000, paying another $400 a year in taxes.
79.
Am I right?
You got 679 now. For the
Oh, sorry.
override. Plus, whatever your increase is going to be,
Yeah.
the normal increase.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get my head around. And personally, I say that's
money well spent, it's good value, I had no problem paying it, even though I want to fix it up. I'm getting my money's worth. And I also want to say thank you to all of you people for the hard work you've done, all volunteers. And this town runs on volunteers, pretty much, in addition to the professionals that we need to have. To have a, you know, to have a town that we value, and that's why people move into this town as much, because the tax rate's low, it's because it's a great town. With great services for an extremely great value. And I'm supporting override and. Yeah, do I like paying more taxes? No, I don't like paying more for anything, but I do it because I get something in return. And I appreciate all your work.
Thank you for that, sir.
Thank you.
I'm Lynn Latham and I'm chairman of the library trustees. And just to the question about the number of people, I'd just like to mention very, very quickly that from the old library to the new library, we have had 0.5 FTE increase. I can tell you that circulation alone, never mind programs, compared last year, January through July, and this year, January through July, we are circulating 26% more items.
I had a question about the healthcare costs. So are those costs that are, is it a combination that new hires are needing health insurance, or is this just an increase in health insurance costs for town employees? And can you explain why it's such a huge increase?
Yes, so it's not new hires, it's anyone that utilizes our health insurance, current employees, as well as Jane just mentioned, retirees that we cover. Lauren can probably explain better than I can, but I'll try. Lauren's our HR director, she's been in meetings all week long about this increase. We are members of the Hampshire County Health Insurance Trust. And there are 70 or so, some odd members of that trust. And they explained to us several months ago when we got the first massive increase of 330,000, that because of several very high dollar claims that they were dealing with, they would have to make with that first increase. We complied, added that money to our budget, that's $330,000 in roughly cash that we were now unable to use. Then, on the day that we met with the select board and the finance committee to have our first real discussion about an override. Earlier that morning, pretty much out of the blue, Lauren, they notified us of that massive $400,000+ increase on top of it. They had previously told us that it was going to be a mid-year double-digit increase, but they didn't know what the number was going to be. So they had guessed between 15 and 20%. We factored the 20% in, and unfortunately, we were right on the money. They bumped it by 20%. Then they warned us that next July 1 there'll be another increase, and it was specifically, correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren, it was specifically due to any high dollar claims that they were having. Essentially, they said that if they didn't get, apparently every member of the trust is allowed to vote on these additions. If it were to be voted down, they advised us that essentially the trust would close its doors. They would go out of business. Is that accurate? As of September 1st.
Mike, I think
An article in today's paper.
the key
Yeah.
point is, I think that might just be missing for some folks is that insurance trust is a captive. It means that we're self-insured. So unlike the Blue Cross Blue Shield and commercial coverage that you see otherwise, the claims experience of the pool is what drives the performance of the trust. So that's why if you have the planets line up wrong and you have a handful of very high dollar claims, very expensive cancer treatments, whatever, it affects the finances of the trust. So that's why it's a different.
All right, so I don't know much about this subject in terms of insurance, but is this something that you the town joined because it was more affordable, or it's on one of only a few options that municipalities can, use for health insurance. So what I'm getting at is there an alternative that might be more affordable, or is this something that you're just kind of, it's not, can't change?
So we are researching other options. We are researching other options, that being said, we are limited because we have so many unions, we can't just make a plan change without bargaining with our unions. That being said, there are 72 members, so collectively together, these are communities. All of our resources together are typically better, for us collectively. I think it's really probably the first time we've had a catastrophic experience with the rates going this high and the year increase. And so I just want to clarify one thing. The first increase was derived by prescription high dollar claims to the GLP-1 weight loss drugs. And then the secondary mid-year hike is due to high dollar claims on the medical portion.
Thank you.
And one other thing is that, if we were to get out of the trust and couldn't find another trust to work with, of course, to cover all of our claims systems. That was just a big question mark. It's literally the last thing you want to do when we're trying to plan budgets, put a question mark. Response.
I have my, well,
Yes, ma'am.
because we're talking percentages, just to get that in proportion. Last year's budget was $1.5 million, exactly $1,500,000. $1.5 million for our. This year, we increased, there was 18%, so 18% of $1.5 million is a lot. So, and there were some additionals coming in, so it's 330,000 increase, was mostly that 18%. Yes, there are others that come on, doesn't mean new hires. There are people that we have here that don't take our insurance. And then they will make the decision to come on the insurance, because it is a good one. And then 20% on top of that, $486,000. That would bring our new budget $2,316,000 from $1.5 million in 1 year. We can't manage our way out of an 800 and 1600, 800 and we can't manage our way out of that. There's no way we can trim budgets and say, how about we lay off a person or two? That's not even going to do it. We need help. We need to get additional money in to be able to pay these costs. Because, I'll tell you this, if we don't get the override, we're still gonna have to pay that $486,000. That means that the rest of the budget, the departments are gonna have to move over. Because we have to pay the insurance first. Yes, some of it may drop, because maybe we'd be letting off people who take the insurance. But then they're gonna be filing for unemployment claims. So then we're gonna be paying them unemployment. So, and let's say we've laid off in a department that can't function with fewer people, then we're gonna be paying overtime on the other staff. We can't manage our way out of this easily. Will we survive? Sure, we'll survive. We've been around hundreds of years. We'll keep going. But this is just, we're at a time where we need help to get ourselves even again and take all of your suggestions into consideration for the next, for how we're going to go from here. It's not just for the quote, take this extra money, we're all set in business as usual. No, all of your suggestions are good, but we just got caught with this extra 486,000 a week ago. We need help to clean this up, get ourselves on a base, and then start looking at the entire budget to see if there's another way we can approach it. There's lots of ideas that people have about how we might do some things differently, but we are where we are. And the other thing I would say that doesn't pass, besides that moving over $486,000 of other, is the budget that we funded has the ambulance at under 100,000. That money is getting used up in the first quarter. That would be an immediate stop to that department.
The second call. Then a second call ambulance. We still have,
Second call,
we still have a first call ambulance. People misunderstand.
It's for the second.
It's for the second.
What you saying?
I know, I think
We are
people-
going to lose
yeah, we lose our second.
$600,000 worth of
I know, but there are people who, when they hear us say ambulance, they think that there will be no ambulance.
That's a private.
our paid department. Okay,
Our-
we're not gonna lose the contracted department,
Right.
that doesn't cost us anything, and wouldn't
Right.
save us at all to get rid of them, but it
Right.
will save us to cut the department.
Right.
It's not a matter of cutting the department, because I heard you said earlier, that, or one of you said that would be the first, that might be one of the first to go, well, it would, because it's not in the budget. You know, things would change in October, but this is where we are right now, and, that's it.
And I think the other thing just to factor into that as well. And it's unfortunate, but it's just the way things work. I don't know if anybody, you know, here has ever been involved in any sort of a layoff at their place of employment. But the other thing that hits you is the employer is responsible for unemployment costs. So when people go unclaimed, not only do you factor in the fact that, you know, okay, we're no longer paying that salary related benefits expense. But that's negated by the fact that the employer has to pick up the cost of the unemployment coverage for a period of time, and there's compounding to it, because when we're looking at having to cut, pick a number, you know, X hundred thousands of dollars of salaries out of the budget, if the override doesn't pass, we then have to layer onto that the unemployment costs, and it makes the cuts that much deeper. So not scare tax, it's just the mechanics of how this is gonna have to work, so we wanna make sure you understand that.
Just a couple things, when it comes to the library, I think it's great that the turnover rate that you said is up 25%. We're more affiliated with other libraries, and I remember, I'm sure everybody else that does, when we were at the Goodwin, there were late fees for your folks. Anything that was late, there was a fee for having a late fee on a book. Is there a possibility, knowing that after a week or two time, be creating any kind of a revenue, because the library doesn't take used books, they only purchase new books, am I correct about that? That, is there a way of supplementing and reestablishing late fees on books?
The amount of revenue was negligible. I don't have the number off the top of my head. I will get it for you.
Just,
It
it's
is
just a thought, we're all trying to throw things out there to see what kind of revenue.
It is much more important to us to have the book returned. Whether or not it's 2 days before it was due or 2 months after it was due.
I think that would be fair to say that all departments will be approached again about what additional revenues any of the other departments might be able to bring in, or whether the fees they charge could be raised. So, you know, without needing to pick on any particular one, yes, we will be approaching all departments with those kinds of questions.
Rob?
I got two quick questions. One of them, the clarifying question this gentleman brought up is that if the override passes and we go to the 1357,000 or whatever it is. Is it my understanding correct that it may be more than that because of a natural increase in the taxes as well, or is it just definitely gonna be the 1357?
So the 1357 is only for the override. It's only for the money that we are requesting right here. So your normal 2.5%, whatever the valuation of your, the assessed value of your property or properties are, would be in addition to this. We just can't calculate that for everyone. It's just because it's different for everyone. So we figured let's be as simple as possible and only show the override amount.
Okay, I was just asking the question because it seemed like it was something that could be relevant.
Yep.
Or
Oh, very relevant.
if there was any possibility, if you had any idea of what it could be above and beyond the 1357, I understand that's not a fair question to ask right now. The other question I had is on one of your previous slides, going back several years ago, we were proposing that the override being at 1357. We were at $13 and change a number of years ago. And more of a technical question is how we went from the 1311, I can't really see the number. To kind of go Yeah, to where we dropped down so substantially, it kind of came back up and really asking the question as an informational question as to how the budget works or how that kind of happened. It's almost a foreign concept to some people. I think the taxes could go down.
Right.
So I'm just kind of curious about how that works, and that's really.
It's a great question. Actually, when Paul helped us put this slide together, I did the same thing. And I said, what was going on in 08, or what was going on in, 2004? And so I don't know if anybody else can help with that.
Assessed values.
Yeah.
Assessed values come into play here, so just the calculation, the tax rate, something we kind of back into, right? So we figure out the levy, what that dollar amount is, and then we divide it. So that's what determines the tax rate, so I would imagine back in 08, I don't know this for a fact, but it's possible that the assessed values. There was some fluctuation in those particular years.
And I believe in those years, there was a lot of commercial development.
Yeah.
It was,
Right.
you know,
Right, so the tax
the
rate,
commercial base that we wanna do, wanna penalize more and double pay. They're the ones that effectively are,
drove the rate down.
our rate of $13.11 back then would be about $22 today. I just wanna make sure that the commercial base is the reason why you're not paying $30 per thousand right now.
So Susan has her hand raised, and I guarantee she'll have the answer.
Yeah, so in 2004, that's when the borrowing began for the police station and the new elementary school. So our taxes went up. However, we had other debt coming off that at that time, they just allowed the debt to drop off until it went to wherever it did. Now, what we tend to do is try to keep the debt level so that you don't have these wild fluctuations in tax rate.
Thank you, Susan. Okay. Yeah.
One question, nobody could have saw any of these increases happening, I'm not picking on anybody, but. I own my own business, I kind of watch what goes on and years go on, and we all understand that things happen. We weren't planning, did we overspend a little bit too much in the last year and a half? I'm just trying to get a concept of how, for example, small businesses like North Hadley Sugar Shack, I'll say my name. We're trying to keep a single rate in the town of Hadley, and I think that's great. For a few small farm businesses that are trying to survive. Once we're gone, because we can't pay the bills, and I can't go from $60 for a gallon of fresh maple syrup to $300 to compensate my problems. Then maybe you guys can go to a 2-tier here and get some money off of Route 9 where these huge corporations should be paying so that these residents that are sitting here don't have to suffer and barely pay their oil bills in the winter time. So I'm confused how we got this fast into a hole, and why weren't we just slowly creeping up with the taxes? No matter what situation we're in, so we had some free money sitting somewhere. It seemed like we drove ourselves into a frick hole. So in English, just let me explain that.
Can you pull up the free cash? The free cash slide?
The actual description of it.
No, the one the year over year. Where we
Oh,
had.
yes.
So when you go and look at the last 4 years. That free cash tells you two things. One, we're not spending up to our budgets. In other words, departments are actually giving back money. Which is good. And revenues are either at what we expected or greater than what we expected. So all those things actually point to an organization that's not spending to the limit every single year and also generating proper income. Because we're saving money based on what we budgeted to what was actually spent. So that money is coming back to us. That's a healthy sign. Now, obviously, 23 and 24, you had a little bit of a decrease, but overall, it's not trending to the cliff that we're facing today. And if you look at some of the increases. You're talking about a department that we were funding from stabilization. We knew that. You're right. We should have realized that if it wasn't gonna work, we didn't have a backup plan. And now, this is the plan that we have to put it into our budget. Because at least I want a full-time fire department. That's just the way it is. The insurance, I mean, that's just completely unforeseeable. That was not something that we saw. Raises, that was something that was long time coming. That was a long wage study. And we are still on average below other people. We could have raised the rates of wages more than what was negotiated. So those are all kind of reality checks in that sense. I agree with you. This is not, my family's gonna be on a family level, we're gonna be paying more than any Hadley resident here. Without a doubt, we're gonna be paying tens of thousands of dollars more.
That is correct,
Yeah.
and that's where I'm going with this, is you're looking at small businesses and families and stuff like that. It's not just a single, it's a big hit, you know what I'm saying, I'm trying to.
I don't like it.
Says, how did you all let us get here? I understand you're looking for us, but I still need to tell myself, it just seemed like we bought everything new in this town of Hadley. Spent every last penny we possibly could have on everything, whether it needed it or not. Somebody or something didn't make this all work properly to get where we're getting.
And
Well, I'm
I'm
convinced it did.
commenting on this also. I'm a small business owner in this town, okay? And what it takes to run a business today is astronomical.
You almost can't run these.
Now, just listen, 2 years ago, I bought a new excavator, okay? A lot of money. Just say that one machine is $300,000, okay? If I want to buy a casket for it, just for example, a 6.5 foot cleanup bucket, that's $10,000, okay? I can't afford to do that. The town of Hadley, I'd like to see the town report for the last 2 years. I want to see what they paid. I can't even fathom what this town has put away in money for the equipment that they have. It is unjustifiable. It is absolutely ridiculous. This town has more equipment, probably than the city of Springfield. We don't do water taps anymore in this town. When Teddy McCoinchick was on the water department, they did the taps by hand. Before Teddy retired, they bought the automated drill. Everything was done mechanically. Guess what? We don't do it now. We pay EJP to come in to do our pipe taps. Aren't we capable? Is this town just gone this far? Nobody knows what's going on.
I agree with you when it came to the spending, the first one when it came to the excavator, but it's all on all of you as taxpayers.
Yeah, we're paying for it.
As
But-
voters.
But all of these
You all
things,
voted for this. Right,
not
those of us
taxpayers,
that, those of us that did not want it, it's the voters that wanted for it, right, you can't blame. The non-taxpayers, the select board, it's our own fault as residents of this town voting for it. And that's what I'm saying, we all need to start coming out.
We're not showing up to vote.
So it's our own fault for not voting.
Exactly.
Paul, no, you're right. No, Peter is right. You know, we voted for this in town meeting. And whether or not, I don't disagree with you, Paul, but this was all voted on, and now. As much as we don't like it, we have to move forward and realize.
We just can't afford what the highway department has purchased.
Okay, gentlemen, you got somebody over here that would like to add to the.
So, Joe, in my opinion, the short answer is yes, we got ourselves into this hole. Now, part of it is our own doing, what we decided to spend at town meeting and at the ballot box. Part of it is completely unforeseen, like the $700,000 in health insurance. The reality is, if we had to come up with $700,000 on our own for health insurance or some other unforeseen circumstance, yeah, we could raise some free cash if we happen to have free cash to cover that expense for that year, but that doesn't help us the following year. You know, expenses are outpacing what we're bringing in revenue, unfortunately. And that goes across the board with pay increases, just the cost of doing business, sludge hauling for this wastewater treatment plant. I believe, what's 200 grand it went up in a year? The cost for getting rid of the slush, because there's only 2 places and they can raise the prices and there's nothing you can do about it. We gotta send it somewhere, that's where we can send it. So there's a lot of that, and yes, we got ourselves into it by what we voted for at town meeting. And that's, you know, the equipment. It's not just us 5 or those 5 over there making decisions. Yes, there's always things that can be cut, there's always things that can be reduced, and like people have brought up fees, things like that. All of it should be looked at continuously. Should we split the tax rate? Maybe not. What's the benefits? You know, what are the drawbacks of doing that? But the ambulance, for example. As we were talking about, we were taking from stabilization initially to fund the ambulance, the startup for our own ALS service. The idea was that it would be self-sustaining once we got it running. The ambulance revenue fund, revolving fund. Right, would cover a lot of the costs of the ambulance and possibly make us money down the line. We made the decision recently that we were gonna put that on pause because there was a lot of cash that we had to outlay in order to get started up. And we thought that this was not the right time for it. So, yeah, we had to raise stabilization, we had to do that, but the reality is we had to hire firefighters and EMTs in order to staff that ambulance. And we had to hire firefighters and EMTs in order to go to a 24-hour fire department. So the question everybody has to answer when it comes to this override is, do you want to keep exactly what we have in this town now or not? I'm not saying one way or another, but you as voters have to decide. Do you want a 24-hour fire department? Do you want, you know, the senior center to be open the hours it is? Do you want the library to be open the hours it is? Do you want to be able to go into town hall, pay your tax bill, or ask a question? So those are all the things. In order to do that, you have to vote yes on the override. If you say we have too much services, then you're against the override. And the only answer is layoffs. Because we can cut $100,000 for a solar system. Sure, we could have put that into, you know, into savings, into stabilization. That still doesn't cover 700 grand in healthcare expenses. It doesn't cover $250,000 in union negotiated salary increases that we have no say over at this point that's been agreed to. So the money has to come somewhere. And yeah, we can cut things here and there in operational budget, but the vast majority of that is going to have to be salaries.
And I don't disagree, but what I'm saying is. If we honed in a little bit and did a little more savings throughout the whole time, I'm sure there's lawsuits that we paid and probably don't wanna talk about. We got a brand new library that needs a roof, what, how many years has it been? Who was overseeing that? Shame on them, where's the accountability? We're just gonna pull that money right there, you know, so I mean. Those are the things that are frustrating to me as a taxpayer. I think there's a lot of wastefulness going on and we just brush it under the carpet and let's raise the taxes or figure something, let's not talk about it. I wanna talk about it. I think we should tighten up and start saving every little penny we'll have.
And I agree with you, as far as tightening up where we can. And absolutely, there's always waste in every business, every form of government. There's always things that can be done better. So like when we talk about, hey, can we charge some fees? Can we capture some of this revenue another way? Absolutely, we should be working at it. But when it comes to this year, we have to make the decision. Do we want to keep the staffing and the services we have, or do we want to reduce it? Because there's no way that we can raise $2 million in late book fees at the library in the next couple of months. So that's what it boils down to.
Just one thing, Joe, to add too, because we've had this discussion at our joint committee meetings. I hope you believe us when we say, you know, we don't like being here either. However, we have to deal with it from a leadership standpoint. But we only want to do this once, right? I mean, I'm not a Hadley historian, but my understanding, I've only lived here since 1999. I believe I was told 1980 something. Yeah, there was an actual attempt at a general override that failed in Hadley. And it's been crickets ever since. I mean, we've managed, you know, since that time. I think it's been a pretty good run. And we recognize how painful this is. But part of the reason for the dollars that we're asking for is, again, we're hoping, can't guarantee, but once and done, to stop dipping into the reserves, to hit the reset button, I think is what Paul or Linda said before, so that we're not coming back to you year after year after year like we see in other area communities. And I hope you believe us on that, because that is the intent here, to reset, and we're not gonna have this conversation for a while. Can't guarantee what will come down in the future.
Does the budget include the new fire truck?
The new fire truck is there,
It's not in the budget.
it's not in the budget.
And it's not.
We're paying for that in another couple of years, right?
It's due in 2 or 3 years, and we will start paying for it the year out. Are you concerned about the impact?
It'll be borrowing, so there'll be something that we'll borrow over time, so there'll be a payment. Annual payment, and it will increase our debt payments, yes.
Increase that, because you have to repay for it.
The goal is that year over year, that between revenue, taxes, the 2.5, that we'll be able to get a hold of these increases year over year. That's why we do want to do this now, because it's just gonna get worse if we don't.
And other things that we borrowed for are being paid off now, and the ambulance will take its place. There was a school project that we voted in. Oh, okay. We voted a school project in a few years ago. And that should be done in 3 years, about when the fire engine will then kick in. At no additional cost, basically to the tax, because we will have paid off one item and that will come in. That was the plan when we voted for the 2 of those items at the same time at one town meeting.
I would just like to expand on what Molly said earlier. None of us up here enjoy this process one bit. We're all taxpayers. Several of us are commercial and residential owners, so we're gonna get hit twice. So, and we've been dealing with this for months and months, and Mike and Linda longer than that. And again, it is not fun for anybody, but it is a necessary evil.
Okay. There are no other questions. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Fire away.
It's kind of little notepad.
You know, I just appreciate that it was brought up about the health expenses. I own a business too, and the rates go up every year, and I wanna know if what you're proposing is planning for the fact that you're gonna hit again and again and again. Because the population is aging, chronic illness is not getting healed, it's just getting medicated. I am concerned about that.
Then the answer is yes, we are prepping for what is coming in the future. If we can get us back to our heads above water. That will allow us to utilize our free cash the way that it was meant to be used. So if we get hit with a percentage of healthcare increases that we were unprepared for, that's what we should be using that. Well, you know, we need to have it. So yes, we are building this based on that.
Trying to say, one of the things that we did when we've been through this process a lot. And originally, we were looking for a capital maintenance plan of 500,000. But at that time, we didn't have the increases in the healthcare. So we would have been actually lower than we are now in total, and we would have been putting aside, assuming that a second part of the override passed, $500 million. Which means very quickly, we would get to a point where we can have major impacts on future purchasing. Okay, we lowered it to 3. In fact, there was even talk when all these extra expenses came in, should we maybe just put that off for another year? We are committed that we have to draw a line and do things differently. And that reset, part of that is putting aside money for maintenance and capital. Ideally, we would go back up to 500, but in lieu of what we have here, is at least a very good start. Okay. Yes.
Anybody else have any questions? Comments?
And then more forums, so you can come back.
Yes. So thank you all for coming, and as Mike said earlier, if you come up with any questions or ideas, please come to another forum and let us know what you think.
More than welcome to email or call me directly as well, if it's just something you want me to answer, as best I can. I guess that motion, you guys, yeah, we need a motion, I'll make a motion to close the finance meeting.
Okay, I call, like, I turn it off.
Aye.
Favor? Aye.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.